Have you ever failed at anything? How did you feel about that failure? Did it put you off wanting to go for anything else? Well, stay tuned because today I'm going to share with you why failure is actually the key to your success. Hi, I'm Serena Simmons and welcome to 8 Model Psychology. So I'm going to kickstart today by just sharing a personal story with you from my upbringing. So for a moment I just want to take a look at the landscape of failure in my family as I was growing up. The idea of failure in my family is a really interesting thing to me. Failure was something that we could encounter at any moment. Like most people, failure is a normal part of life, and I think that we just naturally fail at things as we go throughout our existence. The thing about my family is that failure, I believe, was definitely something that was frowned upon. Now, you might be thinking, well, of course, why would your parents want you to fail at anything? But I'm actually just going a step deeper than that. What I mean is that in my family, failure was something that as children we were almost taught to avoid. In other words, we were told to work really, really hard so that we passed our exams, like most children would be. But actually, failing was not an option for us. We had to pass our exams, so we were always pushed to do really, really well. And actually, if we failed anything, which inevitably we did, because that's again part of life, we were told off for it. And it was something that was hidden or something that we shouldn't tell people that had happened. So it wasn't just exams that we weren't supposed to fail at, it was just all the other little things that went along as part of our daily lives. We were not really supposed to fail in sport, so if we didn't come first, that was seen as a failure and it was something that we really shouldn't talk about. We weren't even really encouraged to do anything silly or adventurous at the fear of maybe failing. Again, not that we didn't do those things, but we always had to be the best at that thing. In other words, if we weren't the top of the class, or we didn't get the highest mark or if we didn't get the highest mark in our exams, that in my family was perceived as a failure. Now, why am I sharing all of this stuff with you from my childhood? Well, how your family deals with failure creates a particular culture within your family, and that culture that you have lived in throughout your upbringing actually has a huge impact on your attitude towards failure, and that in turn can have a massive impact on your mindset, your belief, and your ability to perceive whether you can succeed in something or you can't. In other words, it has a bloody great big impact on your life. Now, I've only touched the surface here, sharing a few kind of quite general things about my upbringing and the culture of failure in my family. But here's the crux. Why is failing so important? Well, I would argue that this is vital for your success, and here's why. Failure leads to adaptation. Adaptation leads to evolution, and it's your evolution that we are after in this process, because actually truly evolving and looking at what you need to do to push yourself forward will ultimately require that at some stage you will fail. Think about it for a moment and just think about a general evolution process. Even when you look at the animal kingdom for evidence of this, in order for animals to actually evolve themselves, they would have had to have kept kind of trying to do something, so they're ultimately interacting with their environment. Maybe it's as simple as trying to reach a higher branch, or fly a bit further to the other island, to the nicer berries. Now, those things don't happen straight away. In other words, they would have had to have failed and failed and failed, but adapted and adapted and adapted at the same time. Ultimately then, that failure and the process of failure and adaptation leads to an ongoing evolution. And the same can happen with you. Now, for me, one of the biggest things that I did that helped me overcome this feeling and this pattern of behaviour that had come from my upbringing was to do something a little out there. For me, I took on improvised comedy. Improv taught me so many things: thinking quickly, being creative, having fun and a laugh. But really for me, one of the biggest things I got from doing improv was failing. And in that situation, when you're maybe making up a song on stage or creating a scene from nothing in front of lots and lots of people, you're going to fail pretty spectacularly. That's how I built my failure muscle. And when you're looking at failing as a way to evolve yourself, which ultimately will lead to your success, then failing is going to happen as part of that process. Now, you don't have to go and do improv if that is not something that you want to do, but there is something that you can do to start this process of failure today. One of the first things I really encourage you to do is to write down your family story around failure. So a little bit like I did at the start of this video, I just kind of gave you some general things about the thoughts and the culture of failure in my family. What was that for you? Write it down and get really clear on how your mum and dad related to failure and how that made you and maybe even your siblings feel. Write down a list of all of the things that you feel you have failed at. Write down not just a list of those things, but consider and write down your reasons for why you consider those things a failure. And here's the crux. The second part of that exercise is to then think of 3 things for each of those failures that are actually positive outcomes. In other words, what was positive as a result of that failure? Another thing that you can do as part of this exercise is to write down a series of things that you are afraid of failing at. What is it that you're not doing because you're afraid of failing? Is it that you really would love to leave your job? Do you want to start your own business? Do you want to push your business forward or write that book? Write a comprehensive list. Have a brain dump. Write all of those things down that you're afraid of failing at. But then here's the thing. Then write down the cost of not having a go. The idea around doing these exercises is that you start to get a really clear idea of the perceived failures that you are avoiding and also the cost of not actually pushing through and doing them anyway. In the end, knowledge is power. I honestly believe that if you seek things that you can fail at, so seek out those experiences that you can fail at, that we build that failure muscle. Remember that that failure leads to adaptation, and adaptation always leads to your evolution. And by doing this, this will ultimately get you to where you want to be. I hope that you found this video useful. And don't forget, if you like what you've seen, please click on the link below to subscribe. I've also created a downloadable checklist for you, which has all of these exercises and questions in it for you. So click on the link to get that, and I'll see you next week. Bye!